Welcome to the Diversity in CS series, to this webinar series. I'm Dr. Mike Lee, and I'll be your moderator to this awesome panel. I'm so excited about this. I am the global head of renewals at a company called Avalara, and I've been here about 2 years, but I have a really deep background in customer success. And I'll be speaking about that a little bit as we go, but I'm really excited about our panel that we have coming up. So, first, I want to thank Success Coaching for giving us this space and platform to have this discussion. Success Coaching was one of Success in Black's early partners. They believe in our mission and they've been great allies in this journey. For those of you who are not familiar with Success Coaching, they're a world leader in customer success training. Their mission is to reinvent the customer success training experience for leaders and customer success managers, making it accessible, effective, and actionable. They offer a variety of training options from self-paced online courses, live instructor-led boot camps, 12-week coaching programs, as well as live events such as CSM Mastermind and CS Leaders Roundtable. To find out more about success coaching, what success coaching can offer, please visit successcoaching.co. And we have a link. We'll put a link here in the chat. A quick plug for the Customer Success Thought Leadership Awards. If you're in customer success, I'm sure you've heard of this. Tomorrow is the last day to nominate a success pro who has been a mentor, built communities, or shared insights this year. The nomination form is at successcoaching.co/thought leadership. There are a lot of people who deserve to be recognized, so don't forget to do that before nominations close tomorrow. I could think of 3 people on this panel who are very deserving of a nomination, but I'll let you make those nominations. Also, I'm proud today to be representing Success in Black, which was founded in 2020. Success in Black is an award-winning platform to elevate diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging in customer success. We aim to take customer success and make customer success and tech safer and more inclusive for all professionals. We provide powerful resources to help them advance their careers. Stay connected with us by following us on LinkedIn. That's linkedin.com/company/success-in-black. And signing up on our website, successinblack.co, all one word. But before we start, just a few housekeeping things. Please remember to ask your questions via the Q&A window. Now, if someone has already asked a question, you'll be able to upvote it to let us know that you have that same question. And we'll try to ask the questions with the most upvotes first. And then please share your comments in the chat window. Success Coaching will be offering a replay of this webinar, so please check out their site to access it if you miss any part of this live event. All right, housekeeping is done. Let's get started. Let's jump into this. So now let's hear from our panelists to introduce themselves. And I'm going to start with Virginia. Let us know who you are, what you're doing now, and what is your path to customer success? Because we all know everyone's path to customer success is different.
Yeah, I think that's one of the fun things about CS is finding out how people found their way here. So Virginia Bloom, I am the Director of Customer Experience at Acclaimant. We are an InsurTech SaaS product. And I found my way to customer success by tripping and falling out of account management and into customer success. I met another CS professional who said, I think what you're doing and the part of it that you like the most is customer success. Why don't you come take a look at some customer success roles over here? And that was a really great career change and career path for me. And from there, I've moved into management and then into leadership.
All right. How about you, Kelley?
Hi, everyone. My name is Kelley Johnson. I am a strategic customer success manager with Schneider Electric. Schneider Electric is an electricity company that provides the equipment that will electrify around the world, both EV centers as well as data centers across the country. So I actually came traditionally, I would say. I started my career in finance, but then was able to go into research sales, and that not for me at all. And I was introduced to something called customer success, which aligned a lot with client services and management, which is what I was doing in the financial world. So I started at a SaaS company called Data Miner, did customer success as an associate, then have moved up the ranks into customer success across different avenues now in the hardware space.
Oh,
And
awesome.
can you guys
That's
hear
just
me okay? Because it's saying I have low bandwidth. Is there any issues with my service?
so you kind of broke a little bit, but I think it's okay.
Okay.
I think it's
All
gonna
right.
settle down. We made
Checking.
out everything that you said, so it was great. It was great.
Awesome. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And what about you, Jasmine?
Yes. Hi, I'm Jasmine Reynolds. I'm actually in the enterprise customer success space with technology, more specifically with software development intelligence. And that sounds scary, but let me start where I started. I come from the dark side. I was in sales. I was in sales at the beginning, and the pharmaceutical medical device industry. If you know anything about it, it is treacherous, but it holds a special place in my heart because that's where I started and moved into the customer experience, like post sales world, because we desperately needed it. And then from there, actually took a step back, was in leadership, took a step back and went to an IC role in CS. And then now in CS again, just in the technology space. So the step back was to just really get into a new industry. And yeah, that's a little about me.
Oh, very good. So that kind of shows you that there's so many different paths. Everyone has a different path. I used to be a programmer. I was a Java developer and kind of went through some different paths to get to customer success, which is pretty good, but it's so many different paths. But when I was doing customer success as an individual contributor, it was just customer success. There was not the digital or the enterprise. It was like everybody did, it was just customer success. Grab you some customers and make it happen. So let's talk about to set the stage here. Let's talk about the differences in customers and the different types of customer success, and let's talk about what it actually means. So, roles, such as digital CSMs or enterprise, renewals focused, they're sales focused CSMs, growth focused, all those kind of things. Let's talk about that. You know, Kelley, you've had some experience in these different ones. Talk about the differences that you understand and the different types of customer successes that we're seeing today.
Yeah, I have been in every single roles. Digital customer success is that one-to-many function. It is very scalable. Are oftentimes an associate or working in a more support role. So you're not giving your customers that white glove service, but you are being to still have that touch point as a human with the customer. And then I moved over into enterprise, and enterprise is where you really focus on strategic planning,
Mhm.
understanding the customer's challenges and ways that you can be that client partner with them and just ensure that they are meeting a common goal of the customer. So I think a lot of us are probably in that enterprise strategic space on the I would love for you guys to drop like where are you in your journey of CS, but then also lastly that renewal focus one. So the more revenue focused position, you are focusing on that land and expand. You're talking with a more sales centric approach, trying to understand ways that you can expand the contract, upsell them as well. So focus on that revenue aspect of it all.
Absolutely. And so, I've learned and I've seen these roles kind of grow over time. And sometimes, some roles you need more experience or more, different types of backgrounds to kind of excel at, right? Some are, better suited for entry level CSMs. However, in each one of these categories, we have a lot of experience. Some people stay in digital CS for a long time because they're really good content creators. In digital CS, you have to create content because the large span of it. But Jasmine, you mentioned you're in enterprise as it is. What do you see as a what makes us enterprise, kind of CSM versus, maybe someone who's a digital CS, entry level CS person. What do you see in the differences in your types of customers, your engagements on the enterprise side?
Yeah. So I think for me, that looks like who you're having conversations with, right? So from an enterprise strategic level, you're speaking to CTOs, CIOs, CFOs, and making sure that you're translating everything that you would normally have a conversation about at the bottom level, IC, to what matters to them at that level, which is like, just learning how to speak that language. But if I were to kind of just, touch on what this looks like in real life from all of the different roles, the one thing I would say, it's actually not about the title, and it's actually more about what your calendar looks like. And what their calendar looks like, the dashboards, the artifacts, titles can lie. And if you've been on the job market, you can tell, like, listen, you're guessing when you look at those titles, but your calendar doesn't. So I think, having that digital customer success, that's like one to many, and that's what their week looks like. From the enterprise, again, it's like the executive choreography, right? Renewal focused CSMs, it's deal hygiene, right? So you got to understand what your best fit is and what excites you, and what's happening on your calendar.
No, that's you're preaching a word there, Jasmine. You're absolutely correct, because you see a lot of stuff on LinkedIn, and it makes you, and even job descriptions. They'll say, this, but they'll ask you to do all of this, right? It is such a big thing. I really like that nugget. The calendars don't lie. So Virginia, so you are a manager. You're a leader in customer success, and so and that's a broad space, right? But talk about, why are these distinctions important, in your space and customer success? What does it mean to have these distinctions, and how, as a leader, do you look at that when you're maybe looking at hiring or looking at performance and so forth?
I think what we've seen, at least since, sort of the earlier days of CS growing, it used to be like a jack of all trades. If it has the word customer in it, it lands over in customer success. If it talks about the customer, if the customer breathed on it, it comes over to customer success. And I think as the economy changed, I think that was a really big catalyst for a lot of leadership to take a step back and say, like, what can this department do for me? They have a lot of information, they have a lot of access, they have a lot of insight. And as we started to see that it was more difficult to get customers were, more guarded with their wallets, you start to see numbers shift, and companies start to see, hey, more of my margin is being attributed to what Kelley said, landing and expanding these customers. And that's when leadership at the top starts to see, hey, there's a lot going on in this department, and I might want some of my folks to dig down and get really great at certain specialized areas. And I think that's when you start to see the support going to this team. It's when you start seeing customer success bridge over a little bit into customer experience. You start to see a little bit more cross-functional work, and you start to see these specializations. You realize, hey, if the revenue piece is that important, I need to have people who don't just understand having the conversation about money, but understand where this money lands once it comes over to us. I need to make sure that they understand the priorities or the importance of expanding certain accounts, and how that, hits our bottom line, what it does to our overhead. On the other side, like Jasmine was saying, there's a certain level of ownership of the relationship that you have with enterprise CSMs. That's a very different type of CS. It's very much owning your piece of the business, owning that relationship, and ensuring that it excels. So as a manager, when I look for folks to fill these roles, I really do look at, where are you already excelling? And then I help people dig in there. If you are really great at the relationship building, then I want to have you do more of that with my enterprise customers. If you are really great, I have one person on my team who is really great with middle market. We are using what they do as the template for our digital process, because that's what I want to emulate. I want to emulate what they're doing. I want to make sure that all of my customers have that experience. So you start to see what your team is good at, and then you take their best practices and make them team best practices. So I think if people identify, where do I want to lean in? What am I good at? That will start to help pivot you toward where you fit inside these specializations.
Right. And man, it's so good because um, when we become CSMs and we start to get in there and we start to like certain parts of it, we start to get really good at it, and that specialization um, uh, is where we grow. That's where we see like the certifications from success coaching. Feel, by the way, I actually each time I'm a leader of customer success, I require the success coaching certifications because, and we pay for it, the company pays for it, but it's is we have to understand what we're doing in these different spaces there. But is there a is there a drawback or any kind of challenge with hyper specializing in these different places? For example, digital CS. There's a lot of creation. There's a lot of, content creation. There's a lot of one to many sort of things. Um, but is there any challenges with hyper specialization in there? Now, a while back, there was maybe not even long ago, there was a push for hyper specialization. It was industry specialization, but also skill specialization. And sometimes, it's hard to move between roles doing that. But Kelley, when you are focusing on your skills and your building, when you're talking about different pieces of it, you know, what what is your advice for someone who is looking to build up the skills, specialize in that specific area in customer success? Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think when it comes down to specialization, lean into your own personality. Like Virginia, you said like you're looking across your team and seeing what they're good at, and then ways that they can scale those best practices across the team. I think it's important to do that internally as well. Are you someone that enjoys those sales focused conversations? Because if you are, then you can lean more into the side of things and you can share that. If you're someone that loves more project management, you can be on the creation side where you're not focusing on the executive presence or that client building, client relationship building, but more so just interactions, and then focusing on ways to solve quick problems. So there
Right.
are a few ways that you can talk internally with yourself and see what you kind of align with. Comes down to a specific industry. You can look at the types of customers that your company has. So when I was at Twilio, I was really focused on the financial customers, financial and
Hmm.
retail, and that was something that really aligned well with my background coming from finance. So I can do some of the more industry practices that were applicable to the customer. So there are different ways and strengths that you can align with personally to see how it can lean into your day-to-day jobs.
I really like that. So thinking to yourself, what am I good at? What do I enjoy most? When I was in IC, I really enjoyed talking to customers. Back then, we could travel a lot. And I love going to, being in person, talking to the CEOs, the CIOs, and so forth, having those conversations, going to lunch and just connecting with people. I really like that aspect of it. So it was really, really important, really, really important to think about what you like most about it. Obviously, we have a lot of things to do with CSMs, a lot of paperwork, admin stuff, kind of, all those sorts of things. But what do you like most? And then you start to find your channel there. Now, I want to jump to something that Jasmine said a little while ago. It's about, like the titles and what people say they do and everything. But what does this look like in real life? How do these different types of roles manifest themselves in real life? And, how can we kind of leading on to what Kelley said, how can, our listeners or people who are interested in customer success find that place for themselves in customer success?
Yeah, I can jump in here. So, What it looks like in real life. So, like I said, you have to pay attention to your calendar and you have to figure out, like Kelley said, what you like, right? Like, you really have to figure out what excites you about your day. So when you're thinking about a best fit, is it commercial energy? Do pricing terms light you up or do they drain you? A scaled appetite, or do you love building one to many? Complexity tolerance, do long cycles and stakeholders excite you? Technical curiosity, do data flows and integrations make you lean in? I would say the biggest takeaway here that I'll share is that choose your lane by your calendar and KPIs, not by the title. Like I said, digital wins by experiments per quarter, enterprise wins by alignment per quarter, and renewals win by value defined per quarter. And you can run this as a test to see and if you had no exposure to it, you can see, expose yourself to it and see if that's something that you're interested in. But you'll learn very quickly if you like it or not, because if it's your day to day, you're gonna be like, man, maybe this ain't for me. Maybe renewals ain't it, or maybe digital is not, doesn't have my name on it, because I'm not getting excited about those conversations. So you have to be passionate about those conversations and figure out what you like.
Right.
Jasmine, you made a really good point. Like, you have to know what the win is. And I know we talk about that all the time with our customers. Like, what is the win? What defines the win? What are we driving towards? But like, it's the same when you're trying to pick where you want to be in CS. If you're not excited about what the win is, you're never going to be excited about any of the progress or any of the work you're doing. If the number of renewals you're getting doesn't like excite you, like, then that's not for you. If you need quicker wins, then like a long enterprise relationship that's kind of a slow burn, slow growth, then
might not be for
enterprise is not for you. So it's not just about, the KPIs are important, but also thinking about what is the cadence of those KPIs, and do you really light up when you see those numbers hit the board?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. That absolutely. And we talk about what you gain and what you lose from this, what does real life look like, and, for me, we have leaders that are on this call, right? That are viewing, and people who will view later as well. And when you think about, um, how you move in your career. We're talking about find what you like, find what you specialize in, find what's great about customer success. But what does that look like leadership wise? Because, one of the things I really, and like I mentioned a little while ago, what I really enjoy is the connection with the customers. I really like that. That was great. But when I moved into leadership, that changed because I'm no longer talking to customers, right? And that was really the big part of what I liked about customer success. But how do you deal with that? That is a challenge. So when you're thinking about, what your career path looks like, individual contributors are very needed, and we need people to go all the way up to principal customer success manager in the strategic space and all of that. But we also need leaders, but you have to understand what you give up as a leader. And one of the things, you may give up something that you really like the customer facing. Now, for me, I changed what my target. I didn't have external customers. I looked at my CSMs as my customers, and I did CSM work as if my CSMs were my customers, right? And so I was like, it was more of a value thing, working for the company, the value there. How are you using the tools? Are you using all what we have here in the company to the best of your ability to make sure that you're actually happy here at work? However, sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But I always feel that as a leader, I always try to get on a customer call here and there just to get that feeling back itself. As you move between these, and Virginia, I want to ask you this, like if we're talking about the characteristics, and the different verticals and so forth, what do you believe you gain, you lose, or the experience going in between those particular things as a leader that you see? And how do you move people in between those roles?
Well, I will say I have maintained and I enjoy being player coach. Because then I'm not too far away from the work that I'm asking my team to do. I don't ever have any, well, I won't say never. I usually don't have unreasonable expectations because I'm going to have to do it myself. So I have to think through, if I'm doing this for my customers, what happens to somebody on my team who has a bigger book? But like you, Mike, when I looked at going into leadership, I was like, oh, I'm going to kind of miss those customer interactions. And I took a step back and I was like, well, what do I like about the customer interactions? And what I liked about it was being able to present solutions, push them further in what they were doing, and just have everybody have a win. If you've ever read anything I've written or ever talked to me, like I'm always looking for the win. I'm always looking for the reason to celebrate. And I realized that if I am in leadership, if I am in management, I get to take the best pieces of everyone on my team, the best knowledge that I get from networking, and I get to disseminate that to my whole team so that we have more wins. So when I looked at why do I really like the IC work, why do I really like the customer interaction? Like it wasn't the admin work that had me coming back. It was not that. It was being able to see these wins and being able to push my customers further. And I understood as a leader, I was going to get to do that on a larger scale by helping the folks who were on my team. So that was sort of how I reconciled like trading the good parts of IC in for leadership. I think if you have folks on your team or if you are somebody who wants to go into leadership, go and advocate for yourself. Find a project, find a thing, and say, I would like to take this on. I would like to do this. Believe me, your boss will probably appreciate it. But it will get you that experience. It will get you a feeling for what does it feel like to be in leadership? How does my mindset have to change? Going from an individual contributor to being in leadership. And is this something I really want to do? Mike, you hit on a really great point. Some people, they try this out and they're like, oh yeah, that was not for me. I enjoyed that. Not even a little bit. I want to go back to owning my book and being an IC. And those folks are really, really great. They're really great at being ICs. They're like the rock stars that you want to have on your team. But if you want to test out the waters, advocate for yourself with your leadership and see if there's something that you can do to test that out.
Right. And I'll add to that. Leadership is good. I don't want people to think that is always tough, but a way to get in is something that Jasmine posts about on LinkedIn a lot, is about this idea of sponsorship and mentorship and the importance of that to have to get that path in there. And maybe they help you to understand what you're looking at in going in that direction. Jasmine, do you want to kind of speak to that a little bit? Because I've seen posts a lot recently, and you've been thinking about this. You're one of the thought leaders on this, about using your sponsor or your mentor to help you prepare to go into that leadership space.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest difference here that I want people to walk away with is the difference between a mentor and a sponsor. A mentor coaches you. They help to polish you. They help to identify your gaps that you need to fill in order to get to your ultimate goal or wherever you want to go, right? Or even figuring out what that goal is. Whereas a sponsor is opening those doors. They're having conversations with you in rooms that you're not a part of yet. You want them to think of you when opportunities come across their plate and say like, oh man, I know Mike would be perfect for this. I know Kelley would be perfect for this, right? So I think investing in those type of relationships and finding those types of relationships are extremely important because you can't be everywhere at all times. You have to learn how to establish your influence in rooms that you're not a part of. And you can't do that without knowing those people in those rooms and introducing yourself and also making sure that you're marketing yourself to those people so that they think of you when those opportunities arise. Listen, your career, your growth is your job. It's not your leader. It is nobody else's responsibility. I promise you, they don't care about it as much as you do. And therefore, it's your responsibility and to establish those relationships that matter and will help you get there.
Oh, those are nuggets. I hope you all taking notes.
Write it
'Cause
down.
this is, yeah, these are nuggets right here. This is great. Now, customer success continues to evolve. There's always something new happening. I've seen it over the years. But I want to talk about how do we future proof our career? So what's next? How do we look at what's next and take advantage of it? I'll go to you first, Virginia. You know, what do you think that our listeners and even us, what we should do to start to think about the future in customer success?
Well, I have three things that I would suggest, and I don't think they're necessarily CS specific. The first one is don't ignore or be afraid of AI. Even if you don't want to use it, your customers are going to use it. You need to know your customer; they're going to be using it. So get comfortable with it enough to use it, enough to understand it, enough to understand when it's not serving your customers, so that you can help them out with that. The second piece would be a lifelong learner. Like Jasmine said, your career is your responsibility. And part of that is your education. Mike is great and apparently is providing, stellar coaching for his teams. That's not going to be the case everywhere you go. Find your resources, find your team, find what you can do to educate yourself and make that a priority. Make building your repository of knowledge a priority to move your career forward. And lastly, and possibly selfishly, find out what your boss is doing to help you predict what your priorities are going to be.
Mm,
If
mm.
you want to be, if you want to future proof yourself where you are and you want to start building, to the next steps, figure out what that person is doing. Even if, as I mentioned before, you don't want to go into leadership, if you want to, continue growing yourself as an individual contributor, knowing what your manager or your leader or your leadership or your board of directors wants to have happen will take a lot of the questions out of your head around prioritization and will help you move faster. You'll be able to streamline what you're doing, take some questions off the table, and look really clairvoyant. So if you know what is happening in leadership, if you know what the priorities are, those will really help you either in growing your career and moving elsewhere or making sure that you can grow yourself where you are.
Absolutely. I love it. I love that. All of those, all three of those, extremely important. What about you, Kelley?
I agree absolutely, Virginia. I think another thing that on the other side of the AI piece is leaning into human interaction. Post COVID and being in a world that there's so much uncertainty, it's important for you to lead with empathy and lead in a space of leaning on the client relationship side as well as the human side of it all. Streamline your workflows with AI, absolutely, so that you can work and really focus on finding ways to have unique approaches to problems. People are expecting with a lot less. So being resourceful and being sharp in ways that AI cannot, because teaching the models these days with humans. So I think it's important to lean into that interaction, and that'll be ways that you will future proof your experiences, because they'll remember you for you as well as you helping solve their challenges.
Oh, absolutely. Great stuff. Man, I've been at this for a long time. And I'm still taking notes here. I'm still getting some nuggets here. I'm loving this. Jasmine, what about yourself? Well, what would you help us to understand how we move forward? How do we prepare for what's next in our careers or in customer success in general?
Yeah. I hope what I'm about to say comes at no surprise if you follow me on LinkedIn. Another thing that I truly advocate for. But to future-proof CSM, I think they do two things exceptionally well. They become credentialed translators who speak customer, product, and revenue.
Mm,
Two levers that matter the most, I think, and in my experience, is certifications that travel and revenue fluency that earn you seats at the table. Money talks, and you have to learn the language, okay? So I'm going to touch on first the power of a certification. It's much bigger than a sticker that we slap on our LinkedIn. It's shared language and proof of practice. Pick one that extends your range and across organizational lines, then pair it with a visible capstone, right? And that's your sticker. But really, it's crossing those lines and expanding your range. Rule of thumb, one certification per discipline that you want to influence. And then secondly, speaking about revenue, something I advocate about often, you need to learn how to speak revenue like it's native. If you can't brief a CFO in numbers, your ideas will stay mute. They don't care. It doesn't mean anything. Money talks. So know the scoreboard. NRR, GRR, CAC, gross margin, discount rate, multi-year mix, the list goes on. Cost to retain, things like that. If you think that's your leader's job, you're already behind. You should know those numbers too and how they impact. And if you don't, ask your leader. It should not be a secret, because if you don't know how to move the needle, then you can't optimize if you don't know your numbers.
That's right. Oh, y'all, I'm telling you this. So this revenue thing. So me and Jasmine have gone back and forth a lot about this idea of revenue and customer success.
Love it.
I'm old school. I'm old school, and that was before revenue was part of customer success. And I was hanging on. I was one of the last to hang on and say, no, we don't need to do revenue. But she convinced me, and I now, I kind of have to with renewals. But man, her arguments for it are unquestionable, right? If your organization, if your customer success organization is not generating revenue of some sort, it is a call center. And in today's environment, it will go away. Your organization will go away. We've all seen it. We've seen on LinkedIn mass kind of groups being cut because it is a call center. Everyone has to generate revenue. That is so right. But see, as we started talking about adding revenue and the different things that customer success does, we have to talk about compensation, because sales and customer success are compensated differently. And if we start to add revenue, and revenue has started to be an added part of customer success metrics, we have to talk about what does compensation look like for these different CSM roles. I would love, Kelley, I'm going to start with you about this, but let's talk about what compensation is in customer success, especially with the new motions, like Jasmine was saying, with revenue. And I'm going to hear from each one of you all. Now we're at we're at 39 minutes after the hour. So this would be it, but then we'll start looking at these questions. I see a question in the Q&A, but let's talk about this compensation really quickly.
Yeah, I'll be quick. Especially coming from the IC space, I think it's important to clear on what the split looks like. Since you aren't in sales, understanding what that variable looks like and what KPIs you need to hit those. So if you're a digital CSM, how many touch points do you need to have a month, quarterly, et cetera, to hit the KPIs? If you're on enterprise and you have a longer deal cycle, sometimes deals take 2 years. What points do I need to hit between those mark and my start date to show that I have been making an impact? Do I need to have a certain amount of QBRs? Do I need to have an rate? Do I need to have a usage rate? Understanding what success looks like is extremely important, because until you know what, you're not sure what your compensation should be. And I think they work hand in hand. So being clear on what your split is, being clear on the KPIs, and then understanding how that leans into the team's overall number. Like Jasmine said, if you can't speak to it, then it's going to be really difficult for you to show your value, because then you're just maybe running towards the wrong goal.
Right. Absolutely. And Virginia, as a leader, how do you think about this sort of thing? How do you think about compensation for your team and customer success in general?
Well, first of all, I'll say, Mike, I was with you on the caboose of the revenue train. I did not want to get on I didn't want to play. I don't want to talk money. I don't want to ruin rapport. And then like at some point I was like, all right, yeah, we are the people who have to do this. Deep sigh. Um,
That's right.
so I'm with you that it's been a long journey to get there. I think as a leader, I I'm struggling to strike a balance of fairness with my CSMs because when you start to talk about compensation around servicing different kinds of customers. Kelley made a really good point. Like some cycles for customers are going to be longer, are going to be shorter. I know for us, our enterprise customers, they take a lot of energy and a lot of effort, but there's not a lot of space left there for expansion. That's why they're enterprise customers versus, some of our SMB customers, there's a lot of space there to grow. So how do I make sure that, my Rockstar Enterprise CSM has the same opportunities for compensation and bonuses as, my digital and my SMB folks? So right now, that's not something that I do. That is not something I feel comfortable doing with my team simply because I don't think their books are balanced enough for that compensation to be fair for all of those folks. So we're operating on a rising tides lift all boats sort of mentality where again we're working on taking the things that we're learning, elevating good practices to being our best practice, and then I as a leader am working on what can I do to balance out the opportunities for increased compensation for folks on my team so that nobody feels like, hey, my specialization, my skills, my wheelhouse is not as valued as somebody else's.
Right. That balance is extremely important. And people know, people in different groups, they understand different levels of customer success and sales, et cetera. They understand when they see differences in the compensation. So that balance is absolutely correct there. Jasmine, what are your thoughts about compensation, as it relates to customer success and, how do we as leaders or how do we as individual contributors think about, you know, compensation in our space?
Yeah. So I think comp and metrics vary by where value is created. Scale, relationship, commercial outcomes. Titles matter less than what you own. And it's important to measure what the role truly controls. And it shouldn't be based off of vibes, right? Like how are they actually impacting the number? And I think it's also important to mix in leading versus and lagging indicators. So, for example, enterprise CSMs get NRR plus leading signals like executive alignment. And then the reward or the compensation is based off of that durable value, multi-year price integrity, adoptions that stick, things like that. I think the bottom line that I'll leave here is that digital is paid on scaled outcomes, enterprise on revenue and executive outcomes, renewals on commercial results, technical on time to value, leaders on portfolio economics. Pick the plan that matches the behavior you want to be famous for.
Right. Oh, that is great. And so like we all we talk as a panel. We send out these abbreviations NRR, GRR, and so forth. It's really, really, really important for all levels to understand all of those because what you do, your engagements, your practices, your everything that you do in customer success in some way impacts the different pieces in different ways. For example, when you're talking about GRR, a lot of CS organizations, unfortunately, are measured by GRR, but there's so little that a CSM can do to impact the actual number of GRR, which is really difficult to calculate if you have a larger company. There's so little that we can do. So when you come in as a leader, or you're looking at a job description and they say, we need somebody to measure GRR. Well, that could be a challenge. And that could improve GRR. Overall, you'll probably improve GRR if you're doing well. You know, uh, gross retention rate. That's what GRR is. And so, but that's a year long. That's a long measurement. It takes a really long time to measure that. And sometimes companies are looking for something in the immediate, and you can't always engage. You can't, an engagement won't change GRR, a program will. And so, you have to think, you have to know what it is that you're getting into. So if your leaders are saying, okay, we're going to change over to NRR, which is a better metric for customer success, net retained revenue, it's a better metric. It kind of shows what customer success, the impact that customer success has on customers, then that's something easier to manage, something to think about. But we have to know, as CSM professionals, no matter where you are in your career, you have to know those things, because it will make a really big difference on how you engage and how you measure yourself as a CSM. So that this is great information, you all. This compensation bit, there's a lot of discussion about compensation. There's people who are just kind of getting over to the revenue and the commissions kind of piece for customer success. Some people have already been there. Some people don't believe in commissions for customer success. It's just maybe just a bonus. So we have to think about that. Okay, but that's great. That's great information. Now, as we kind of start to wind up here, we have a couple of questions in the Q&A section. Let me remind everyone, if you have questions on anything that we're saying here, please, as we're going through this, please go and put it in the Q&A session as we're going through these. Okay, so looks like Derek Nelson, yeah, I had a question. Says, my background in science education. However, I have also worked in client-facing roles in wellness spaces. I would like to pivot into customer success, perhaps in healthcare or perhaps in education. Can you recommend any courses I can take to upskill myself? Okay. Anybody want to take that there? Because I can start off there, right? Well, Jasmine, you came off of mute. You want to say something?
Yeah, I'm not sure that I can think of anything outside of like the normal CS certifications or courses, right? But what I would challenge you to do is think outside of the box. If you're wanting to do wellness spaces, healthcare, technology, think about platforms like him, hers, think about Calm, think about like those um, apps that actually do have customer success and still have a customer experience that they need to impact. So I think don't just pigeonhole yourself into just like wellness healthcare. It's so much bigger than what you could imagine, and think about those spaces too.
To piggyback off of that, I completely agree. There are so now well tech or health tech type of companies. I know Spring Health is one. There's Omada Health, there's Calm, like you said, Headway, Mindset. There's so many different avenues that you can go, especially in mental health care aspect. If you wanted to go down like true tech, there's Peloton, ClassPass, GymPass, all of those different types. Think about what you use daily and see if they have a customer tool or a customer success function. So there's a lot of different ways that you can pivot and then lean on the people that you can meet in these different roles. When you say ed tech, there are a few ed tech people in the chat. Go into their LinkedIn's and really capitalize on the time using right now to see if you can help drive those connections going forward.
Yeah, to kind of, I guess, piggyback off of both of you, I would say if you're looking for a specific industry and you're talking to somebody, go figure out what the metrics are that they watch and see if that is something that you understand, or do you need to go plus up your knowledge on that before you start trying to pivot into that career. CS has an alphabet soup of acronyms. Take some courses, success coaching, obviously. Take some courses and get that alphabet soup under your belt so that you have the nuts and bolts of how do you translate the information and the knowledge you already have into how it will function in CS, so that you can really capitalize on the specialized knowledge that you obviously already have. And then figure out, what are the wins, what are the numbers, what are the trends that these folks are following. Does that make you happy? Is that something you really want to do? And then how do you think they're working to achieve that specifically through customer success. And I think that will start to guide you towards, okay, what are the other things that I feel like are gaps in my knowledge?
Right. That is awesome information. And also, Derek says he comes from a science education background. I'm a firm believer that people in education, teachers or whatnot, are the first CSMs, right? Because they're the only ones who see every one of their customers in face to face every single day.
Mhm.
Each one of them, for example, a teacher in an elementary school, each child may be on a different reading level. They have different stakeholders because each child has the parents or their guardians, that you have to work with. You got the progress reports, you got all of that. And, renewals are, the end of the contracts are at the end of the year. They should have found value in that product. So if you have education background, you have that customer success. Just work on, these certifications like success coaching to talk about how, like, what is customer success? How do we um, manage that? How do we use those skills? That's a great question, Derek, and I appreciate you asking that. Good
I have
luck
one
on.
more thought on
Oh,
that.
absolutely, Kelley. Go ahead.
I think it's really important that if you have all the certifications, you're still able to sell yourself, right? You have to be able to speak to those roles transition out. So get the success coaching certifications, but still be able to practice selling your experience and how that can apply to the roles that you are desiring.
I'll,
Absolutely.
I'll add really quickly, in case y'all haven't got it yet. Derek, find you a mentor. Start to build out your personal board of directors because they will help to guide you on the right path. Slide in some DMs. All they can say is no.
Right. Personal board of directors,
Mm-hmm.
extremely important, extremely important. Now, Gladys asks if you're leading a CSM team and there is a need to expand the team and have specialized functions, how would you navigate building these roles for the first time in your org? Which comes first? Expanding the team or like having the specialized roles? And I'm guessing the specialized roles are what we talked about at the top. Digital versus, renewals versus enterprise, whatever it may be. How do you start to divide that out as on a team?
I
Virginia, do you want to go first there?
Yeah, I could talk about this a little bit. It was my experience that I needed to find where the dividing lines were. Um, because we weren't just dividing the work among CSMs, we were also trying to find a way to tier and segment the customers themselves. And if you have legacy customers and you've taken a couple left turns with how you handle them in the past, then your legacy customers, they don't line up. It's a little bit of work to get everyone in the bucket where they need to be. So for me, it was more important for me to use the team that I had, the tools that I had, put my customers where they needed to be, make sure I felt comfortable with that. Now I'm going back and saying, okay, now looking at our sales pipeline, what's coming in, what kind of customers do I think I'm going to see? What are they purchasing? What kind of service do I think I need? Where do I think I need another tool, another person? How do I want to expand my team? Expanding the team isn't always headcount. Sometimes it's tools, sometimes it's streamlining, sometimes it's AI. There are a lot of ways to expand your functionality. But I find that you need to know where your customers need to be. You need to know what kind of service your customers need before you start lining up a team to do that work.
So what it sounds like you're moving into, Virginia, is the idea of segments, right? Your segmentation strategy. And once you're able to understand the segments, you're able to start to think about where people fit within the organization for those particular segments. I usually start in the middle. I start small, medium business, and I define that segment because those with a little less than that drop below to digital or low touch. Those with a little more need go to higher touch or enterprise or whatever it may be. Then you start to think about your team, like who's better at those spaces. We talked about the different specializations. What is needed in these different spaces. So that's what I hear. Am I hearing that correct, Virginia? Or
Yeah, that's very much what we did. We had to do it a couple of different ways. We sliced the pie a bunch of different ways before we found something that we thought we could build off of.
Mhm.
We took, our largest chunk of customers and we rebuilt the customer journey for that largest chunk. And then iterated off of that for our enterprise and then for our digital process. And that's how we're building out our customer journeys for customers. But like I said, we had to do that work first before, because we could have gotten to the end of that and I could have said, well, no, everybody's enterprise or digital, and we have nothing middle of the road. Like we didn't know what we were going to find. And knowing what we found determined, how many people do we need to have where, who needs to do what tools do we need to leverage. So really needed to know what was happening before we started assigning people to do things.
Okay. Now, Jasmine, you wanted to jump in there?
Yeah. So I wrote down a couple of things so I don't forget, because I'm good for forgetting. I wrote down diagnose the friction, and data. Data tells no lies. It is what it is, right? And move from there. And then sequence by customer impact is another thing that I wrote down. Prioritizing building roles that unlock the most immediate and measurable value. And the last thing that I wrote down, and Virginia, you literally just said it, prototype before you add any additional hires. I think iteration, moving like a product team, and iterating before you add, new heads to the count, is really important as well. So that's what I
Okay.
would add.
Okay, that very good. There was a great addition. We have 2 minutes left. I want each of you to give me a really quick, something for everyone to leave with. I want to answer something really quickly. Landis asked a really interesting question. GRR is great, but NRR is low. What should you focus on? You need to focus on your customer growth, because if your GRR is good, that means customers are just staying the same. They're not growing. If your NRR is not good, that means your customers aren't growing. You're not doing your cross sales. You're not doing, your upgrades. You're not doing anything like that. That means you as a leader need to focus on the revenue, the new revenue that's coming in from your existing business. So if you can focus on that, you'll be a rock star. I just wanted to answer that really quickly. So let's uh, leave our views with something um, to take home today and do today, or take that you want them to take from this webinar, just really quickly.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think knowing that it's not a one size approach for
Mm.
any role and any customer is extremely important. Again, that human interaction piece, being able to specialize and quickly to what makes sense for the market, but also what makes sense for your company as well as your own personal career. So being able to pivot and know that it's not a one size fits all approach is the way to go.
Yes.
right. What about you, Jasmine?
I'm going to leave them with two things. Number one, strengthen your business knowledge. It is very important, whether you're an IC or a leader. And number two, numbers are your passport. Tie actions to revenue and own the room.
Mm-hmm. And Virginia.
Well, we talked about, a couple of different avenues in CS today, but like we didn't talk about all of them. There's ops, there's technical CSMs, there's, probably somebody's making up one right now to post on LinkedIn later today. Like there are a lot of different ways that you can, put yourself into CS. So find what is going to authentically work for you, lean into that, find a space that accurately reflects where you feel that you can be successful, and then build yourself up to be ready for that role. Find the education, find your board of directors, find, your sponsorship, but make sure that you are finding something that is going to be authentic for you and a place where you feel like you can grow. Skies will be the limit.
Excellent. So thank you all so much for joining us. We appreciate it. Make sure you check out successcoaching.co and especially successinblack.co. We appreciate it. We look forward to seeing you on LinkedIn and on other other webinars, success coaching webinars, Success in Black webinars.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.